Live on WFLA now. Feel good and live your best life with Bloom Health Club. Here's Gail Guayardo.
How we communicate is paramount. It impacts everything in our life, from our careers to our relationships. That is why we are so excited to have Karen Donaldson, a celebrity communication, body language, and certified confidence coach, who is the author of Speak Like You Breathe. Karen, it is such a pleasure to have you as an official member of the Bloom Health Club.
I take that with honor. Thank you so much for having me.
And Karen, you've talked to her many times behind the scenes. Sarah Smith, who is our producer at Bloom, she is going to be jumping in with some questions as well. But man, first of all, let's talk about you. You have such a fascinating history. Tell us about your background, being from Canada, and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, indeed. So definitely born Canadian, Jamaican parents. And how I got into this, people always ask that question, and I didn't have a straight stream. So going back many years, will not date myself, but nonetheless, I was a chatterbox as a child, right? So as a communication, body language, confidence, and peak performance coach, it was not something that was in my mind. I was a chatterbox as a child. My parents called me a chatterbox. I got in trouble for talking too much, and it's an oxymoron because now I get paid really well to do exactly that. But nonetheless, my high school years were amazing. I also have a background in, I'm a professionally trained dancer and dance choreographer. Used to be a co-artistic director of a youth performing company over in Canada, Toronto, Canada as well. And what happened, and not even what happened, what I experienced was I've been dancing since age 10. And at age 16, we lost our head choreographer. And I had to become the co-artistic director and choreographer with another peer of mine. And at that time, we were 16. There was dozens of dancers, and we had a musician cast, which were people our parents' age. So my whole set of leadership skills came out of there because all of a sudden we were laughing at the choreographer. I was one of the people laughing, and all of a sudden I was a choreographer at the front of the room, right? So that's where things began. Then I used to speak on stage, be invited to different events. And the biggest thing that really transpired and shifted me into this area is that I'm a young mom. My last year of high school, once again, I'm Canadian. My last year of high school, I got pregnant. And even before that, I was the young lady in high school who had friends. I was in the band, I was in the choir, but I was also a top athlete. So I was in the jock hall, I was in the band hall, and I was kind of on the debate team as well, right? Nonetheless, got a scholarship from the US, excited at school. The school was excited for me. The teachers were excited. Came back after Christmas, and I was pregnant, Gail.
So what did that do? I mean, how was that received?
It was the most interesting experience that I'll never forget. People say this often, but I can literally remember it. Now, I hid it for a long time. And when I couldn't hide it anymore physically, people started to notice. And I lost just about all my friends.
Really?
All my friends. No one wanted to talk to me anymore. No one wanted to hang out at lunchtime. If I sat down, people actually moved. I know we see it in the movies, but it's so true.
No, trust me. I was that girl growing up. I was going to get into how I had no confidence. I was not popular. I had none of those high moments early on in my life. But I can't imagine being in a place where you were on every platform, from an athlete, band, popular, and then people are getting up and moving away.
They literally did, and it hit me really hard because I really hadn't experienced it. I had a phenomenal childhood, ups and downs as everyone else, but nonetheless, it hit me hard. And then I started to come to school, and I sat at the back of the class, and that was not me. And heard people talking about me, gossiping around about me, things like that. And there was one day I was walking home, and I lived about 10 minutes from the school, and I passed the bus shelter, and I looked myself eye to eye, and I said, Karen, you're allowing the words and actions of others to define you. You're not contagious. You're not diseased. They can't catch what you have. You're simply just pregnant. You are the same Karen you were in September as you are now in February, the Karen pregnant. And if they decide not to like you, that's on them, because you have to like yourself. That's what matters. So when I said that to myself in the bus shelter, and this is where my mantra has been created from, it's words and actions do not define you. You define you. They only define you if you allow them to. And Gail, I went back to school with my chin up, I sat at the front of the class. I asked them to bring an extra chair because I couldn't fit behind the tiny desks. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter to me anymore because I liked me. Then all of a sudden, friends start to trickle back. People were sitting at the table. And that year I graduated valedictorian and with a President's Award, 9 months pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I had to choose for me. I was allowing everyone's opinion of me to impact me and allow me to believe that it was my opinion too. And I went back and that's where my speaking career really took off because I had teachers at my school, their partners who were also teachers at different high schools were inviting me to speak about resilience. And before all, we were using all this language around vulnerability. It was just resilience, right? It was just motivation and confidence. So I've been speaking about this for a very long time from firsthand experiences. And so that was the beginning of my story. It truly was. That's what shaped what I do today.
And, I think I always bring up my late mom on Bloom, our syndicated show, which you've been on for years now. And we so appreciate your wisdom. And here on the Bloom Health Club, back in the day, there wasn't something called a confidence coach, but my mom was a protocol teacher, and she would teach people how to speak, how to shake hands, how to look others in the eyes, how to stand up in front of others and perform, whether it be doing television commercials or walking down a stage. And I think, wow, what a lost art. And, we need that. We need Karen Donaldsons, the people that instill in us what maybe we don't feel or see for ourselves just yet. And I think it's incredible what you do, because in today's day and age, there's, especially with our youth, there is a lack of confidence.
There really is. I mean, people don't understand that there's an experience that needs to take place. And when I say, let me word that better. Confidence, most people believe that confidence is an emotion. And it's due to that reason that people are waiting to feel confident before they do what they want, before they take that step. And there's conversations around, Karen, you must be born confident. And it's not about being confident. It's more about your self-belief. And that's what I challenge with people, Gail, is what do you believe to be true about yourself? Right? Because here's a fact. And I even have this conversation. I had this conversation recently with a 62-year-old CEO, which I can't name due to NDA agreements. But nonetheless, what do you believe to be true about yourself? And what this individual, 62-year-old CEO, more than enough money for all of us in this room times 15, but people think he is confident. And what he said to me was what he was told as a child. And he's been carrying that.
What did he say?
I can't.
All right, that's pretty. Yeah. I thought you couldn't tell us who the 62-year-old was. But I'm glad you brought up childhood trauma or what we believe, because it's almost God's way of having a sense of humor with my mom. When I have pictures to prove I was probably the least attractive child with the least amount of confidence that you could ever imagine. And I was born to be her project. And, she had all these beautiful young kids, and they were all just like you, beaming with confidence. And then there was Gail. But she never gave up on me, and she kept pushing me, beyond my limits of what I could, believe that I could ever do. And she did a brilliant job, or I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you. And I give all the credit to my mom for who I am today. But I still go back to that little girl that sat alone at the lunch table, to having that feeling of just being not so smart, not so attractive, not so worthy of anything. And why is it that that's what we hang on to into our minds, despite the fact that we've been able to prove everybody wrong?
Right. That's a really good question. Here's where it stems from. I spoke about self-belief. I want everyone to listen to this definition. A belief is simply a thought that you keep thinking. And I'm going to say it again. A belief is simply a thought that you keep thinking. So when you hear it enough, it becomes true for you. Now, when we think about our young age, or times at as a child, we were impacted by other external influences because that's all we knew, right? So what I'm saying here is that messaging that you received became inherent in you. And if you've never, and this is where I encourage people to challenge your self-belief. Like, what do you believe to be true about yourself as a person in this world? And literally write it down. And then ask yourself, did this come from someone else? Did I hear this from a group of people? Did a teacher tell me this? Did my boss tell me this? And have a look at it. And if someone else told you it, you can either eliminate it or you might actually agree with it. It might have been something that was supportive, but you want to take ownership of your own self-belief. So if you believe it to be true, got it, you're good to go. You're good as gold. But if it's not yours and you're now saying, remember, I was a chatterbox. Back then, that was the worst thing to be. I was supposed to be the child that was not heard unless someone spoke to you. I was but why? But why do we have to? But it's red, but I want the green. That was me, in trouble all the time because of a chatterbox. So I had to reinterpret that and say, okay, my self-belief around that, it was negative, but now it's, I want to connect with people. I like asking questions. I just want to know how people think. And I've now reversed it as an asset. So I've defined my self-belief. So I ask people to do the exact same exercise. And you might find what your mother, parent, teacher told you is true for you, but I still want you to make the intentional choice to choose what you believe to be true about yourself. And that's what's lacking. And with that 62-year-old, my CEO client, that's what he had to do. He had to let go of his childhood story and said, you know what? He still stuttered. He was made fun of by stuttering when he was stuttering when he was a young person. One parent was supportive. The other one just poked jokes like the rest of the kids, right? So he still had that. And when he spoke now, the stuttering came out every now and then. And he had been trying. He'd worked with everyone, psychologist, speech therapist, pathologist, name it, to try and remove it. And he could not remove it. Very self-conscious about it. And I said, well, what if this was just you? What if this is simply your unique asset in the world and you let go of trying to remove it? Stop focusing on it. So now he speaks and he stutters every now and then, but it's not a thing. It's just who he is. So now he can truly focus on engaging with people instead of trying to hide his stuttering. So he simply shows up as a new person. He's engaging with his employees. His employees like him because his focus is on that relationship instead of making sure that I look perfect and I don't stutter. He was able to shift his self-belief, and I encourage everyone else to do that exact same exercise.
Now, speaking of exercises, is that what you do with your clients? Because I know you work with people in the C-suite, you work with people who are athletes, TV talents. You get people, teach them to get out of their own heads and just let go of the negative narrative. I mean, how do you help people do that? Because after years of listening to this, recording in our minds, you're right. We do tend to believe, the negative chatter.
Mm-hmm. People are always waiting for a complex answer. And it's super simple, Gail. Everything you do, what you say, the actions you take have to be intentional until it becomes a habit. So when it comes to neuroplasticity, we're rewiring, tongue twister, rewiring how we respond, and we're resetting habits, right? And that's what really needs to be done. It's all about intentionality. And I want you to choose everything that you do. Do I actually want a drink of water, or am I just wanting the water because it's in front of me? Choose. Even if it's going with the flow, so there's a decision, where are we going to eat for dinner, right? Everyone's saying, okay, let's go for Chinese. Someone's saying, let's go for Mexican. You're like, maybe I want Italian. I want you to choose. Are you going to go for Italian and speak up, or are you going to go with the flow? I want you to make a choice and do not allow your environment to dictate what you do and how you think. It's intentionality. So even when you wake up in the morning, and these are the small exercises that start to rewire your brain. As soon as you get up in the morning, I want you to decide what you're going to do. Not, here's my phone, let me pick it up. If you're going to pick up your phone, I'm going to pick up my phone and check my email. Commit to it, do it, and let it go. Make decisions all day so you start to build that muscle. And then on the bigger issues, occasions, experiences, you'll be able to do the same thing because it's now a habit.
Right. Before we move on to communication, which is, a core part of this conversation, Sarah, do you have any questions for Karen when it comes to confidence? I mean, you are, a young up and coming producer. You you exude in tremendous confidence, I think, on the
I
day-to-day.
exude it, but I don't always feel it. I think one of the big things that people my age struggle with, and anyone, is just the fear of judgment, which I think goes back to the self-doubt, and we hold on to these words or comments from people of our past who have made a comment on how we live our life or what we look like or how we speak or whatever the case is. So talk to me more about the fear of judgment and how people my age or anyone can get over that.
A really good question. That is literally what it is. It's a fear of judgment, and it doesn't matter your age. No one wants to be judged. And when we think of judgment, it always goes to the negative side, right? It's never, well, what if they like me?
You're right. It's never positive.
It's never
I'm like,
positive.
why is it always negative?
Totally. It's just that it comes down to your self-worth, right? So here are the facts. We know that our parents have said, or we've read, that don't judge a book by its cover, right? The fact of life, if you are walking on this earth in any capacity, my 100% guarantee is that you will be judged.
Oh, yeah.
It's a fact. So when people acknowledge, like the first step is to acknowledge, I'm going to be judged, right? So don't try and go into a room and not be judged. You're going to be judged. Now, you can either be judged for someone who is trying to fit in, which in essence means you not being yourself, or being judged for being you, right? I have small hands. You can judge me all you want. Like, they used to make fun of me when I was small, when I was dancing. But nonetheless, I have smaller hands, right? They're mine, though.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So when you talk about the process of releasing self-judgment, you have to change your relationship with judgment. 1, acknowledge it, own it. Number 2, ask yourself, back to self-belief. What do you believe to be true about you, right? What do you love about yourself? We're always having a conversation around, what do you want to change? If you could put around a magic wand, what would you change? No, what do you love? No one ever asks that question. What do you love about yourself? And make a list. I call it a love list. You write it out. I'm very strong in writing because there's a different connection between the mind to handwriting and what you receive and what you retain. But write out what you love about yourself and then take a picture of it. And in those moments where you're feeling low or you're feeling demotivated, go to the list of what makes you the it factor, what makes you amazing. It can be your eyebrows. It can be you make everyone smile. It can be you're a great friend. You're a great friend to talk to. You have perfect feet. I don't care what it is. You get to put it down on paper and don't judge it based on someone else's perception. And in those moments, you'll need something to support you. And that's where you bring back up that love list.
That's
Right.
really good. I've done that with some Bible verses. I'll if I'm struggling with anxiety, I wrote down a Bible verse and then I'll go back to that and it helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The more you write things down, the easier
The more, yeah.
you remember.
Without a doubt. So let's talk now from communicating, from confidence, which you help people build, to taking that confidence and learning it to become a better communicator. I think that's something that I have, struggled with, my whole life. I used to say nothing. I'd never stand up for myself. I was the ultimate doormat. Then maybe I over-adjusted for that along the way in life. I think finding balance and learning how to communicate is key. So let's start with, I know we just went from writing a love list, what we love about ourselves, but what are we doing wrong when it comes to the style or the way we communicate that's making us hit roadblocks in life, whether it be with our careers, our partners, our husbands, our children? Where are we going wrong?
We're seeking perfection. We are trying to be the perfect communicator. And our definition of what a perfect communicator is and looks like is absolutely skewed by what we have been socially fed, right? To me, when I help my clients redefine perfect communications, it's the person who makes a mistake. Mm-hmm. It's the person who isn't perfect, right? And when you take the focus off of perfection and your focus is on connection, so you're moving from perfection to connection, right? Because the reality is this, you're looking for resonance with people, right? Some people say relatability. Yeah, that's one level, but you want resonance. And just think about someone you've witnessed speak on stage, on TV, whatever it is. It's the person who you look at and you're like, oh my God, they were so cool. They're just like me. Like, that's the person you like. So we like human nature. And when we think about communication, the wrong thing is that perfection. No one wants this big figurehead, because what happens with that? That person gets overly judged. We just talked about judgment, but you're like, okay, I could never be that person. It's unattainable. Everything about them's perfect. But the person who made a mistake, came on stage with jeans, who's comfortable in their own skin, you're like, you know what? I really love them. I really like what they're saying. I like what they're about. And you don't even look at the factors around, maybe they did stutter, or maybe they paused for too long. The focus is on the wrong thing. You should be focusing on connecting with your people, connecting with that person, because that's when resonance happens.
So how do you make that connection?
Absolutely. Number one, you want to get out of your own head, and you want to make your conversation, like your initial conversation should be about finding the commonality, right? When we can find commonality, everyone's barrier goes down. So it can't be, it's an all me show. Well, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this and I'm that. When you're talking about a confident and a polished, a positive communicator, you have to come from a place of inquiry, right? In a conversational sense, you have to come and appear wanting to know more about the people or the other person. Then that deepens the connection. Then you gain a different level of respect, right? Just think about the classroom, whether it was right or wrong. There was always someone you're like, oh my God, here's a smarty pants again. They know everything. They always have the answer. They're the teacher's pet. No offense to teachers' pets out there, right? I've been a teacher's pet too and that type of thing. But that feeling, that angst, just as a human, you just want to connect, right? So focus on the connection, what you say, think about the other person, think about resonance, bring out the commonality. You know, when we have a conversation, everyone's thinking about themselves. So if you want to be a great communicator, you want to think about the other person. Like, why are they in this conversation? How can I support them best?
Oh, I like that. So, and you know, finding commonality could also mean being vulnerable a little bit. I mean, you don't have to be kimono wide open when you first meet somebody, but you know, just being authentic and not, like you said, not trying to be perfect, because none of us are perfect.
It's so true. I mean, we feel that if we're vulnerable or we share our real stories, that will be harshly judged. Biggest misconception, biggest lie. The more vulnerable you are, once again, not bars open all the time, right? But just being true about who you are in your story and not faking it. And that whole faking it till you make it, I don't like that at all. But nonetheless, when you're authentic and you're vulnerable, like, people see you for who you really are. And it's the easiest way to connect, because you're saying, I'm not perfect. Here's my stuff, but I can still do this up here.
Right.
And then people can see themselves in you all of a sudden. And that's when you win.
I like that.
That's when you win.
I like that.
I feel like this also goes back to not beating around the bush. How can we learn not to beat around the bush and just say what we want to say? And maybe that's also learning how to speak in love and truth.
Right. The biggest thing is know that the other person is not in your head. Know that you can't assume someone will take your hints. So if you speak around it and you leave the conversation, but you haven't really asked, I want you to commit to asking. And the big piece is, going back to judgment, we're all often consumed with what the other person is going to think if we say this. I want you to commit to speaking up. I want you to commit to speaking your truth and then letting go, because the other person is allowed to do whatever they want with what you've said. My friends, we have no control over anyone else but ourselves. So if we flip it around and say, okay, I need to ask this question, it's going to be uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to ask the question. Commit to that. Not, oh my goodness, what's going to happen if I ask this question? And I want you to ask the question, stop talking, don't rationalize it, don't explain. You know what I mean? When we get into that zone, well, I want to know if I could come with you guys, because this weekend I'm really not doing anything and I really like you guys and I think that is it okay if I come with you this weekend? Stop talking.
What if it's like an uncomfortable conversation or a tough topic? How do you do it with grace?
Indeed.
Are there like key words that you suggest people use, or whatever the case is?
Love it. I was talking about that on a TV station, how to have difficult conversations. And I want you, if you have to have a difficult conversation with someone, take ownership for your feelings. And as far as what to say and how to say it, know that if it's a difficult conversation, the way someone receive it may be, their response might be angry or whatever. You can't meet their anger with anger, or you can't meet their disbelief with disbelief. So you commit to keeping your tone at a level that's calm. You commit to not responding if they do get angry. The other piece around taking responsibility is, instead of you make me feel so, you did, you're not, I want you to use I. Take responsibility. I feel uncared for when you're always late for our dates, right? I feel left out when I'm the last one to find. You never invite me. Every time you do something.
That's defensive.
You got it.
Okay.
Right? Take responsibility.
Yeah, you can see the difference.
Totally.
We talked about this a little bit when, and Karen's been on our show so many times, and she'll be coming up on the show this coming Wednesday at 2 p.m. in the Tampa market. And of course, we're distributed worldwide now. But I wanted to ask you, we touched on this, the difficult person that you cannot remove from your life, that you on occasion have to see. I every time I talk to somebody, and including in my own life, there's always that thorn that's sticking out. What do you do? Like, it's so perplexing to me of how people can just be relentless with their meanness, with their cattiness, with them trying to make you feel uncomfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, really good question. We all have them, and they will always be around. So this is a really great question to know how to better handle them. Jumping back to, I don't want to be repetitive, but you can't you can't do anger with anger or rude with rude. That's the worst way to manage it.
But what if we're using your playbook, and we're doing all the things right? You're coming in with confidence. You're coming in with grace. You're coming in with kindness. You're coming in being yourself with authenticity, and you still can't crack that nut.
Stop trying to crack the nut. Stand firm with what you want to say, and don't engage otherwise. So you limit your interaction with them. That's number one, because sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a coworker, it's even a boss. Mm-hmm. Limit your conversation and interactions and respond based on what's being asked. If they go somewhere else with that conversation, then that's where I want you to redirect back to what you've said, right? So if your response is, let's use a concrete example, you're in a conversation and you say, those are all my notes. That's all I have to say about that topic. Like, no, you're always the one who has this little undercutting information to say. That's all I have to say about this topic. You have to start to repeat yourself because they're not receiving it. You can't control what they receive, but you can control what you deliver. You repeat yourself. Like, that's the actual communication strategy that you use when dealing with difficult people, right? If you can't remove them, you manage yourself, not them.
So it goes back to the boundaries.
You got it.
Yeah.
Set your boundary, repeat your boundary. You sometimes, and if it is what it is, you might have to say it 16 times, but I promise you, they're going to get it. What happens is people break and they're like, they get in, they yell with them. I'm like, okay, forget it. You've just trained them to keep doing this with you. That's what happens when you break.
And if you don't have boundaries, you train them to treat you the way that they've been treating you.
We teach people how to treat us. And the question I often get is, well, Karen, they've been treating me this way for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years. It's never too late to stop it. What will happen, though, is know that you'll go through a phase that will be a little bit tough because this is their norm. And you've been doing this dance, and they're like, all of a sudden, they're offended. All of a sudden, they can't believe you're saying no to them. You've always said yes. But it's okay. It's called self-preservation and self-care. Do not allow anyone to make you feel guilty for setting healthy boundaries for yourself. It's okay to say no. It's okay to move away and walk away from conversations and situations. The only person you need to preserve in truth is yourself, because when we're okay, everyone else around us will be okay as well.
Beautiful.
Amen.
All right. Well, Karen Donaldson, you are amazing. I'm still in a state of shock that I actually get to meet this woman up
I
close
know,
and in
you were
person.
here in
So it's
Tampa.
been a virtual relationship for 4 years. That's too long to court via online. Karen, thank you for joining us, and thank you for all the wisdom that you have shared with our Bloom viewers throughout the years.
Thank you so much for having me. Wonderful to see you in person as well.
Thank you, Karen.